In 1994, during a family reunion at a remote Pennsylvania campground, a 5-year-old girl vanished into the woods without a sound. No witnesses, no remains. Just one photo, where a mysterious barefoot figure stood behind her. 30 years later, her cousin returns to find the truth, only to discover that in every photo from every reunion, the same strange girl appears, and she was never on the guest list. Subscribe for more real-time psychological mystery thrillers. Some doors were never meant to open, and some children never really left. Mirror Pines, Pennsylvania, August 4th, 1994. The last photo was taken at 3:14 p.m. It was overexposed, washed in pale August light, a blur of smiling children with popsicle-stained mouths standing near the woods. The grown-ups were gathered around the picnic tables, distracted by sparklers and lemonade, and a cassette radio playing Fleetwood Mac. No one noticed the girl had wandered off. Not at first. Maddie Reddick had been playing near the edge of the clearing, dragging a stick through the dirt, drawing quiet circles as the reunion buzzed around her. She was 5, small, sweet, a little slow to speak. The kind of child who listened more than she talked. No one remembered what she was wearing, just that she was there, and then she wasn't. By the time they realized she was gone, the sun had begun to dip behind the pines. The search lasted all night. The forest was combed, cabins unlocked, basements cleared. Rangers brought in dogs. Helicopters buzzed low over the treetops. But the woods never gave her back. The only clue was the photo. Someone, her cousin Claire, only 12 then, had snapped it without thinking, aiming toward the fire pit as Maddie wandered out of frame. But when they looked at the image later, something was off. Behind Maddie, just at the edge of the trees, stood a figure. Not a shadow, not a trick of the light. A barefoot girl, pale, expressionless, wearing white overalls. No one at the reunion recognized her. She wasn't family. She wasn't a local. She wasn't on the guest list. And yet there she was, watching not just Maddie, but the camera. August 6th, 1994. Location, Mirror Pines, Campground, Pennsylvania. The sun pressed down like a hand on the back of your neck, thick with July heat and the smell of pine needles baking underfoot. It was the kind of afternoon where bees got lazy and air hung heavy, where cousins ran barefoot across gravel paths, and you could hear the faint hum of cicadas even over the sound of distant splashing. Mirror Pines Campground hadn't changed much since the Reddicks first started coming here in the late 1960s. 17 cabins, 1 recreation hall, a shallow, glassy lake surrounded by dense forest that didn't seem to care about time. At 2:14 p.m., the family began to gather for the group photo. Someone, probably Uncle Hank, shouted over the dull murmur of conversation, "Okay, everybody near the old sycamore, let's go. Group photo, then we eat." A cheer rose up, followed by the usual shuffling of limbs and half-hearted groans. Claire Reddick, age 12, clutched her mother's hand and squinted through the sun. "Where's Maddie?" she asked. "Probably with the twins," her mother muttered, scanning the clusters of relatives. "Go find her. The photo's about to start." Claire sighed but didn't argue. Her 5-year-old cousin Maddie had a habit of disappearing. Not in a worrisome way, just quiet. Curious, the kind of kid who wandered off to talk to bugs or follow chipmunks. She wore her cherry print dress again today, the one that never stayed clean. And she always forgot her shoes, no matter how many times Aunt Becca reminded her. Claire checked the obvious places first, under the picnic tables, behind the canoe rack, near the edge of the woods. No sign of her. She jogged toward the rec hall just as the family began lining up for the picture. And then, like always, there Maddie was. sitting cross-legged at the base of the big sycamore, chin tilted upward, watching something only she could see in the branches above. "Maddie," Claire said, tugging gently at her arm. "Come on, we're doing the picture." Maddie blinked slowly. "I saw a girl in the tree." Claire looked up. "Nothing but birds and twisted branches." "Well, she's not invited. Come on." Maddie stood, brushing dirt off her dress, and followed Claire to the front of the group. Aunt Becca reached out and smoothed her daughter's hair quickly before smiling for the camera. Everyone bunched together, smiling, talking, arms around shoulders. The disposable Kodak clicked once, then again. That was the last time anyone saw Maddie Reddick. The first person to notice was Uncle Nate, 10 minutes later, when they started serving lunch from the folding tables under the shade tarps. "Where's Maddie?" "She's with Becca." "No, she's not." Claire was already looking. She'd been looking since the second photo, when Maddie didn't climb into the cooler to steal a Capri Sun like she always did. The search started casual, calling out her name, checking the bathrooms, the bunk beds, the lake's edge. By the 30-minute mark, it had escalated. Adults were moving quickly now, splitting off into directions. Someone ran to get the park ranger, someone else started shouting. An hour later, search and rescue arrived, dogs, helicopters. K-9 handlers pacing the tree line with firm instructions. "Stay calm. No one leave the campgrounds. We'll find her." The sun dipped behind the trees. By nightfall, they hadn't. Campers were kept inside that night. Claire couldn't sleep. The air was thick with silence. Everyone afraid to talk too loud. Some of the younger cousins didn't understand what was happening. Others knew too much. Aunt Becca hadn't spoken since the ranger told her they'd found no tracks, no shoes, no torn fabric, no struggle. Just one small footprint in the dirt near the woods. And then, nothing. Claire sat on her bunk staring at the window, still wearing the same clothes she'd had on that afternoon. She thought about Maddie sitting at the base of the sycamore. The way she'd said, "I saw a girl in the tree." She hadn't been joking. She hadn't been playing. She'd been watching. The next morning, a full search perimeter was established. Police tape, more dogs. Local news vans parked at the front gate. They searched the lake, dragging boats across the still water. They brought in thermal cameras, infrared, even scent cloths from Maddie's pillowcase back home. Nothing. It was like the earth had opened and taken her. By day 3, the reunion was over. Cabins emptied, coolers packed, parents quiet, children kept close. Aunt Becca refused to leave. She slept in the ranger station and stared at the maps for hours. Her husband eventually returned home with their other children. But Becca stayed another 2 weeks. Some said she never left Mirror Pines again, at least not in her heart. The official report listed it as an unresolved disappearance. No suspects, no sightings, no body, just a photo. A group shot beneath the sycamore tree, developed weeks later. In the very front row, third from the left, Maddie is smiling. And behind her, slightly out of focus, is a barefoot girl no one can identify. White overalls, crooked bangs, and a smile like she'd been there all along. September 9th, 2024, location, Jefferson Township, Pennsylvania. Claire Reddick held the photograph at arm's length beneath the pale glow of her desk lamp. Her fingers, curled tight around the yellowed frame, had gone numb. It was the same photo her family had passed around for years, laughing at old hairstyles, teasing Uncle Nate's mullet, remembering how small the younger cousins once were. The 1994 reunion at Mirror Pines, the year Maddie disappeared. But this time, Claire wasn't looking at Maddie. She was looking at the girl behind her. She hadn't noticed her before. No one had. She wasn't part of the family. She wasn't listed in the name scribbled on the back of the photo in her aunt's handwriting. Front row, Maddie, Claire, Sammy, Jen, Garrett. This girl stood just off Maddie's shoulder, unsmiling, pale, thin arms, white overalls, straight-cut bangs, 1 foot bare, toes splayed on the dead grass, and her eyes fixed on the camera, not confused, not surprised, like she had been waiting for the shutter. Claire set the photo down and rubbed her eyes. Her mother had found it yesterday in the basement, tucked in an envelope with other prints from that reunion. She'd asked Claire to scan them for a slideshow they were planning for Uncle Hank's memorial. Claire didn't even remember saying yes. Now she was staring at a face no one ever talked about, a face that didn't belong. By midnight, Claire had pulled out 5 more albums from the storage closet. The entire lower shelf in her spare room was stacked with photo binders, plastic sleeves, and shoe boxes labeled in Sharpie. 95, Lake Geneva, 87, Pittsburgh Cousins, 90, wedding photos. She opened one marked Family 1980 to 1995, page after page of birthdays, barbecues, baptisms. And then, there she was again. Same girl, same white overalls, same blank expression, standing in the back corner of a 4th of July picnic photo from 1983. Claire was maybe 1 year old in that shot, toddling around in a red romper. Her dad was holding a sparkler. Her aunt and uncle wore flag shirts. The mood was pure Americana. But in the background, half shadowed by a tree, the barefoot girl stood at the edge of the lawn, looking directly at the camera. Claire snapped the album shut. The next morning, she called her cousin Jen. "Do you remember the girl in the group photo from 1994? Claire asked. "The one behind Maddie?" Jen paused. "What girl?" Claire described her. "White overalls, barefoot, straight bangs. Looks around 7, maybe? I don't remember anyone like that. Wasn't that the year Maddie—" "Yes," Claire said, "and she's in another photo, too." From 1983A, silence stretched. "Could be one of the neighborhood kids," Jen offered weakly. Claire didn't believe that. "Do you still have your old albums?" she asked. "I think so. Why?" "Can I come look?" That afternoon, Claire sat cross-legged on Jen's carpeted living room floor, while Jen flipped through a faded red binder marked 1983 to 1992. "Here's one," Jen said, sliding a photo from the sleeve. "Family barbecue. You, me, Aunt Becca, Maddie's mom. Look." Claire leaned forward. In the background, far right, partially obscured by a lattice fence, was the same girl, same clothing, same vacant expression. It was like she was always nearby, but never with anyone. Not part of the gathering, not interacting, just watching. "How is that possible?" Jen whispered. "She looks exactly the same." "She doesn't age," Claire said. "That's impossible." Claire shook her head. "Not if she isn't real." By evening, Claire had scanned every photo in her mother's collection. Then she borrowed Jen's, then her aunt's. 29 photos spanning 31 years. The girl was in 9 of them. 9 separate family photos. Same age, same expression, same place. Always within a few feet of a child, between the ages of 4 and 7. In one, she stood beside a sandbox in the 1980 reunion. In another, she crouched behind a picnic table in 1977, always close to the youngest. In the 1983 4th of July picture, she was behind Claire. In 1994, behind Maddie. Claire's stomach twisted. What if this wasn't a coincidence? What if this girl was choosing them? She sat on her couch long past midnight, thumbnails of every photo open on her laptop. On impulse, she clicked open a facial recognition plugin her district's tech department used to scan yearbook portraits for duplicates. She uploaded 3 high-res scans of the girl's face. The software took a minute to process. Match confidence, 96.4%. Suggested identity, Evelyn Marie Cross. Age, 7. Status, missing date of disappearance, October 9th, 1972. Location, Cherryville, Pennsylvania. Claire leaned back in her chair. Cherryville was only 40 minutes from Mirror Pines. The next morning, she searched public archives and found the original missing child flyer. Evelyn M. Crossage at disappearance. 7 height, 4 feet 2 inches. Hair, brown eyes, blue clothing, white overalls, pink shirt, barefoot last seen. Outside her family's mobile home near mile marker 28 witnesses. None search outcome, unresolved. Claire sat in stunned silence. Same name, same face, same clothes. A girl who vanished in 1972, appearing in family photos through 1994. And no one ever noticed. She printed both photos, Evelyn's flyer and the 1994 group shot, and placed them side by side on the table. They were identical. Even the shadows on her face fell the same way. The faint scar above her right eyebrow. The pale crescent moon of dirt across her left cheek. She hadn't changed in over 20 years. Claire's eyes drifted to the right side of the 1994 photo, to Maddie, gone within the hour. She didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. She spent hours digging through old news articles. Evelyn Cross's family had moved away from Cherryville a year after her disappearance. The case had long gone cold. No suspects, no body, just a lost girl. And now, this impossible thread. Claire called the Jefferson Township Police Department and asked if the 1994 Maddie Reddick case had ever been reopened. "Ma'am, that file's closed," the officer replied. "We have no leads." "What about the photograph?" she asked. "What photograph?" Claire clicked off the call. If they didn't see it then, they wouldn't believe it now. But she believed, because the girl in the overalls wasn't just watching, she was waiting. Date: September 11th, 2024. Location: Mirror Pines. Campground, Pennsylvania. Claire hadn't driven this road in 30 years. The stretch of 2-lane highway that wound through pine-thick woods hadn't changed much since 1994. Same faded green mileage markers, same crumbling shoulder where tire marks vanished into the brush, same sun-bleached sign for Mirror Pines Campground just past mile marker 43. Her knuckles whitened on the wheel as the trees closed in, their shadows swallowing the early morning light. The air had that crispness of late summer just about to tip into fall. Cool, but not cold. Still thick with the scent of moss and pine tar. She didn't know what she expected to find, but she needed to see the place. The front gates of Mirror Pines hung open, the wood split in places, the paint peeled to gray. A rusted "closed to public" sign dangled on a chain, ignored. No security, no cameras. Just a long dirt road stretching into silence. Claire parked beside what used to be the ranger's cabin. The building had collapsed inward at the roof, and ivy now strangled the front porch. A shattered window let in shafts of sunlight that pooled over the rotted floorboards. She walked past it without looking inside. Her feet carried her down a path she hadn't set foot on in 3 decades, past cabins 3 and 4, past the rec hall, toward the clearing with the old sycamore. It was still there, twisted and wide, its limbs crooked like elbows, the bark furrowed with deep scars from initials carved decades ago. Claire stepped into the dappled shade and stopped. This was where Maddie had been sitting. "I saw a girl in the tree." Claire turned and looked up into the branches. The leaves flickered like coins in the wind. Birds chattered, but no one was there. Still, the feeling persisted. That someone had been. She sat on the weathered stone bench near the edge of the clearing and pulled out the envelope of photographs. She spread them across her lap one by one. The 1994 reunion photo. The 1983 picnic. The 1977 family hike. In every one, the barefoot girl stood just far enough back to be forgotten, but never far enough to be unseen. Claire whispered aloud, "Who were you?" The wind answered with a dry rustle of leaves. Back in her car, she dialed the number for the county archives office. Yes, hi. I'm looking for any reports or ranger logs from Mirror Pines between 1960 and 1995, especially around missing persons or incident reports. Public access is limited, said the voice on the other end. What's this regarding? A child went missing in 1994. Maddie Reddick. There was a pause. Hold, please. When the line resumed, the woman's tone had shifted. You'll need to contact retired Ranger Hal Emmerich. He led that case. Lives up in Saddle Creek now. But off the record? She lowered her voice. That place always gave me the creeps. Claire wrote down the name and address. She found Hal Emmerich 2 hours later, sitting in a screened-in porch behind a weathered cabin, sipping coffee from a chipped mug that said, "Don't ask me. I just work here." His hair was white and trimmed short, but his eyes were sharp, deep-set, and the color of wet bark. A dog lay curled by his feet, tail thumping lazily. "You the one asking about Maddie Reddick?" he asked without preamble. Claire nodded. "I'm her cousin, Claire Reddick." He motioned to the chair across from him. "You look just like you did, except taller. I don't remember you. That's a good thing." Claire handed him the envelope. Hal sifted through the photographs slowly. When he reached the 1994 group photo, he froze. "Well, I'll be—" "You see her," Claire said quietly. He tapped the image with a crooked finger. "She was there that day. I remember it now. Something was off. Dogs caught a scent headed into the north woods, but then picked up a second trail, barefoot." Claire leaned in. "No one ever mentioned that. No one wanted to hear it. 2 sets of tracks, both small. No adult prints nearby. We figured Maddie was chasing an animal or a friend. Maybe she doubled back, but the second trail never circled." He nodded grimly. "Went straight to the river bend, then vanished." Hal lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. "She wasn't just in 1994, Claire said. She's in our family photos going back to the 70s. Same age, same face." Hal didn't look shocked. "I've seen her before." Claire froze. "When?" 1971. Different kid. Name was Troy Benson. Disappeared from cabin 11. I was new then. First month on the job. No blood, no struggle. Just gone." He reached for an old file box beside his chair and pulled out a yellowed folder. Inside, a black and white photo. The boy, Troy, sitting at the picnic table, holding a hot dog, and behind him, the same barefoot girl. Older photo, same face, unchanged. Claire stared at it, stomach cold. "What is she?" Hal didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice was low. "She's not dead. She's not alive either. She's in between, and she's always looking for someone to bring with her." That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, photos spread like tarot cards before her. The same girl, always just off-center, always behind a younger child, always barefoot and silent. Hal's words echoed, "She's in between." Claire flipped to the most recent photo, the one from 1994. Maddie's last moment, her wide smile, her untied shoelace, and behind her, the girl in white overalls, feet planted in the grass like she'd grown there, like she belonged there. Claire picked up a pen and wrote 2 words across the bottom of the photograph. Evelyn Cross. Then she crossed them out, because she didn't believe that name anymore. Not really. This girl didn't belong to any one family. She wasn't lost. She was waiting. Date: September 13th, 2024. Location: Cherryville, Pennsylvania. The trailer park where Evelyn Cross vanished had long since been paved over. Claire stood at the edge of what was now a Dollar Saver parking lot, watching faded red shopping carts roll across the cracked asphalt in the wind. The address on the 1972 missing child flyer had placed the Cross family at lot number 17, Sunset Pines Mobile Court. That court didn't exist anymore. The trees were gone. So were the trailers. But Claire had memorized the satellite overlay. The old layout matched this exact spot, between the loading dock and a gravel access road. She closed her eyes and tried to picture it. Plastic flamingos, a tricycle overturned in the grass, white overalls, pink shirt, barefoot. Then, she was gone. Claire stepped over a faded yellow line on the pavement. It didn't feel like hallowed ground, but it did feel wrong. A stillness in the air that didn't belong to September. She spent the next 3 hours at the Cherryville Public Records Office. The Cross family's file was thin. 1 page from Child Services, a missing persons report, and a typed memo from the sheriff's office dated October 19th, 1972. Claire stared at the final line. Case status, abandoned. No further investigation pending. Because they moved away, she murmured. Because the child disappeared, and everyone wanted it over with. No suspects had ever been named. No neighbors had heard anything. The family reportedly left in the middle of the night just months later, headed west. No forwarding address. Claire requested a copy of the microfilm newspaper archives. What she found wasn't much. 1 article in the Cherryville Gazette, filed under the headline, "Local Girl Still Missing," with a photo taken during Evelyn's first-grade picture day. Claire compared it side by side with a reunion photo from 1994. Same girl, only Evelyn would have been in her 50s by 2024. The girl in the 1994 photo had not aged a single day. That evening, Claire made a list of disappearances from the surrounding region. She searched year by year, filtering for missing children ages 5 to 7 within a 60-mile radius of Mirror Pines. The results startled her. 1963, Hannah Ford, 6, vanished during a church picnic near Red Lake. 1971, Troy Benson, 7, last seen playing near Cabin 11. 1978, Josephine Maris, 5, disappeared at a campground birthday party. 1985, Parker Quinn, 6, lost during a school field trip to Mirror Pines. All unsolved. All in the same general area. All children between ages 5 and 7. Claire's pen hovered over her notes. Her hand trembled. In nearly every case, the last confirmed photo or sighting of the child occurred during a group setting. Reunions, field trips, Sunday gatherings. Just like Maddie. Just like the others. She scribbled a question at the bottom of the page. Who is she taking, and why? The next morning, Claire visited the only living person connected to Evelyn Cross, her older brother. Edwin Cross lived in a quiet house with peeling paint and wine chimes on the porch. He opened the door before she could knock. "I know why you're here," he said. Claire stepped back. "You do?" "You've seen her." His voice was calm, like it wasn't the first time. I'm looking into my cousin's disappearance," she said. "From 1994. She vanished at Mirror Pines, but there's this girl. We keep seeing her in our old photos. I traced her to your sister." Edwin didn't respond right away. Then he stepped aside. "Come in." His house smelled like liniment and old paper. Claire followed him into a den cluttered with books, framed photos, and stacks of manila folders. On the far wall hung a painting, not of people but of trees. Deep woods. No path. Edwin sat across from her in a faded recliner. "My sister Evelyn," he said, "disappeared when I was 9. I was there, playing in the dirt." She just got up and walked into the woods. Did she say anything? She looked back once, smiled, then nothing. Claire pulled the reunion photo from her bag. "Do you recognize her?" He didn't even blink. "Yes. She looks the same. She always does." Claire leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Edwin reached into a nearby box and handed her a black and white photo. 1967. His own 7th birthday. The girl in overalls stood in the background, staring directly into the camera. Claire's breath caught. "This photo was before Evelyn went missing?" He nodded. "She was at my party too. I just didn't notice until years later." Claire's voice went quiet. So she's not Evelyn? Edwin's hands clenched. No. Claire drove home in silence, her thoughts tangled. The photo timeline was breaking down. The barefoot girl hadn't started after Evelyn vanished. She'd appeared before, in Edwin's birthday picture, in the picnic from 1963, in other family albums, predating Maddie by decades. She wasn't Evelyn. She didn't have a name. She had always been there, watching. That night, Claire dreamed of a forest with no sky. The trees were too close together, the air too still. She wandered between trunks, barefoot. She could feel the cold moss under her toes, the damp leaves curling between her fingers. And then she saw her, the girl in overalls, standing with her back to Claire. Still, silent. Claire whispered, "Who are you?" The girl turned slowly. Her eyes were black voids. She raised one hand, pointed, behind Claire. Claire turned and saw Maddie, still 5 years old, still smiling, reaching for the other girl's hand. "No," Claire gasped, jerking awake in a sweat. The clock said 3:14 a.m. She sat in the dark for a long time, the dream still alive behind her eyes. Later that morning, Claire opened her laptop and started drafting a document titled Sightings, Photos, and Unexplained Presence. She had to organize it all: dates, photos, victims, locations. Something told her she was running out of time. Because this girl, whoever or whatever she was, she had never picked a child twice. And Claire had seen her near Maddie in 1994. But she'd also seen her behind herself in 1983. The girl in overalls had been behind Claire too. September 14th, 2024. Location: Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Claire parked outside the farmhouse just before noon. It was Jen's idea. Her Aunt Linda, the family's unofficial archivist, had moved out here 10 years ago with her second husband and a passion for turning every family photo into a scrapbook. Her basement, Jen said, was wall-to-wall albums, chronologically labeled, color-coded. "It's like time traveling through bad haircuts and birthdays," Jen had joked. Claire wasn't here for nostalgia. She was here for evidence. Aunt Linda greeted her at the door in gardening gloves and a frayed sun hat. "Well, this is a surprise," she said, brushing potting soil from her palms. "You here for the scrapbooks?" "I need to look through everything," Claire said. "All the old albums, especially from before 1994." Linda's eyebrows lifted. "That's a tall order, sweetheart. There's probably 400 pounds of family in those books." "I know. I'm trying to find something. Someone. She's in a lot of our photos. I think she might have been near Maddie when she disappeared." The older woman's expression tightened just slightly. Then she nodded. "I'll help you carry them up." They spread out across the dining table. Stack after stack. Red binders, green ones, leather-bound photo books with curling pages and yellowing tape. Claire worked in silence, flipping each page with surgical precision. She stopped at one marked 1974, Camp Week. There, on the 4th page, a photo of a fishing dock. Claire's Uncle Rick holding a bass, Cousin Ellie with a popsicle, 2 little kids sitting on the edge of the dock, and behind them, standing at the tree line, white overalls, bare feet, blunt-cut bangs. Claire leaned closer, the same vacant expression. She turned the page. In the background of a nighttime bonfire, there again, unmoving, arms at her side, a silhouette caught in flashbulb light. She flipped faster now. 1976, Reddick Family Lake Day. 1978, Easter Picnic. 1980, Morning Campout. 1983, 4th of July. 1987, Cousin Becky's wedding reception in the woods behind the lodge. In everyone, the same girl. Sometimes blurry, sometimes clear. Never aging, never smiling. Always behind someone under the age of 7. Aunt Linda walked in with iced tea, pausing when she saw the growing line of photographs Claire had set aside. I didn't realize she was in that many, she said quietly. Claire looked up. You've seen her too. Linda's eyes were glassy. I saw her the day Maddie vanished. Claire stood slowly. Why didn't you say anything? Because it didn't make sense, Linda whispered. We were lining up for the group photo. Maddie was fidgeting, and there was this other girl off to the side. I assumed she was someone's kid. But afterward, when Maddie disappeared, I looked back at the Polaroid. Claire handed it to her. Linda pointed to the figure behind Maddie. That's her. Claire nodded. Her name might be Evelyn Cross, but I don't think that's really who she is. I don't think she has a name, Linda said. I think she's been following us longer than we've been alive. Claire didn't sleep much that night. She digitized everything, scanning each photo into folders by decade, labeling which ones contained the barefoot girl. She tagged the children in proximity to her: Maddie, Troy, Hannah, Josephine, and herself. In the 1983 4th of July photo, Claire was in the foreground, toddling across the grass, and the girl was behind her, a hand outstretched, inches from her shoulder. She never touched, but she never blinked either. Claire stared at her own toddler face. Was that how she was chosen? Did the girl reach for her too? Why had she spared her? The next morning, Claire called her mother. Mom, did anything strange ever happen when I was little? Did I ever go missing even for just a few minutes? Her mother paused on the line. That's a strange question. I just need to know. There was a rustle of sheets. Well, there was that one time. At Mirror Pines. You were maybe 2. You wandered off during the nature hike. We found you by the old fire pit 20 minutes later, playing with rocks. Claire's stomach dropped. Was anyone with me? Number you were alone. Claire's voice cracked. Are you sure? Her mother hesitated. Well, now that you mention it, you kept saying something strange afterward. You pointed into the woods and told me, the girl in the dirt says I can stay. I thought you meant a worm or something. You were too, Claire. Claire hung up in silence. The girl had chosen her once, and then changed her mind. Why? She reviewed every photo again. Same pattern. Always one child close in frame, always under 7, always smiling. But something new emerged. In 3 of the photos, the lighting was just right, the resolution sharp enough. Claire noticed something. The girl in overalls had a shadow, but it didn't match the others. In one shot, everyone's shadow fell to the right. Hers fell to the left. In another, her feet didn't touch the ground. A sliver of light passed beneath them. In a third, she was reflected in the lake, but not the child beside her. Claire scrawled a new note in her journal. She's not really in the photos. She's on them, like a stain, a parasite. She appears with whoever she's chosen. Then they vanish, and she doesn't age, because time doesn't want her. That night, Claire had another dream. She was back at Mirror Pines. This time, she stood inside cabin 7, the one closest to the woods. The air smelled of mildew and old pine. Something creaked behind her. She turned. The barefoot girl stood in the doorway. Closer now, her face blank, but her head tilted slightly, like a doll testing its balance. You didn't come with me, the girl said. Claire's throat dried. Why did you take Maddie? I offered her? To who? The girl blinked slowly. To the place. Claire backed away. Where is it? The girl tilted her head again. Between. Then she stepped forward and whispered something into Claire's ear. Claire woke up screaming. She didn't remember the words, only the cold. She spent the next day gathering the scans and creating a digital folder labeled Unexplained Child, Photo Evidence. Then she composed an email to Detective Susan Grange at the Jefferson Township Cold Case Unit. Subject, Urgent Visual Evidence. Maddie Reddick Case, 1994. Detective Grange, I'm Claire Reddick, cousin of Maddie Reddick, missing since 1994. I've discovered a disturbing pattern in our family photographs, spanning decades and multiple unsolved child disappearances. Please find attached 14 photos. You'll notice the same unidentified child present in all of them, across a 30-year span. She has not aged, and in many cases appears moments or days before a child vanishes. I understand how this sounds, but I ask you to look at the images. Something is wrong, something we never saw. Claire Reddick. She hovered over the send button and clicked. That night she checked her email obsessively. No reply. She called the department switchboard, left a message. She waited until 2:30 a.m., then opened one of the photos again. The 1994 reunion shot. Maddie in the cherry print dress. Claire beside her, smiling awkwardly. And behind them, the girl. Claire zoomed in, heart pounding. She wasn't smiling, but she was looking directly at Claire. Not the camera, not Maddie. Claire. September 16th, 2024. Location, Jefferson Township, Pennsylvania. The Jefferson Township. Cold case records room wasn't what Claire expected. It was small, maybe 15 feet wide, and smelled of dry paper and mildew. A single overhead bulb buzzed faintly above yellowed file drawers, each labeled in handwritten Sharpie. 1970 to 1979, 1980 to 1989, 1990 to 99, unsolved. A desk fan clicked in slow rhythm from the corner. Detective Susan Grange looked as tired as the room. "You're the one who sent the barefoot girl photos," she said, arms crossed. Claire nodded. I wasn't going to reply at first. Grange admitted. "I've worked here 22 years. Most emails like that come from conspiracy theorists or ghost hunters. But then I looked." She pulled out a folder and dropped it onto the metal desk. Inside, photocopies of 5 missing child case reports. One name Claire recognized immediately, Maddie Reddick. Grange flipped the pages like cards in a magician's hand. Hannah Ford, 1963. Troy Benson, 1971. Josephine Maris, 1978. Parker Quinn, 1985. And your cousin, Maddie, 1994. "Any commonalities?" Claire asked, leaning in. Grange pulled out a legal pad. "Age, all between 5 and 7. Location, all within a 30-mile radius of Mirror Pines. Situation, all disappeared in broad daylight during a group event. Witnesses, none. Evidence, 0. No suspects?" Claire asked. Grange's eyes darkened. "Not real ones. A few scapegoats. A drunk uncle, a runaway foster kid, an older sibling who wandered off. But nothing ever stuck. No charges, no bodies, no forensic trail." Claire swallowed. "And the girl in the photos?" Grange hesitated, then opened a side drawer. Inside was an old photo envelope from the Benson case. She handed Claire the contents. There, black and white, dated September 1971. A family camping photo. 7-year-old Troy stands by a picnic table, and just behind him, partially obscured by a sapling, her. White overalls, straight bangs, bare feet. Same vacant expression. Claire felt cold bloom in her chest. "You saw her too." "I've seen her before," Grange whispered. "But I didn't understand what I was seeing." The detective motioned toward a corkboard on the far wall. Pinned to it were 7 Polaroids. Some faded, some torn at the edges. All of them showing different children, but always the same figure hovering in the background. "I started connecting the dots around 2012, Grange said. "I noticed that whenever I dug into one of these disappearances, someone from the family would show up in the background of another case. Then I noticed she was in several of them, but no one knew her name. No one could ID her, and no one remembered inviting her." "She wasn't on the guest list," Claire said quietly. "No," Grange agreed. "She never is." Claire stepped closer to the board. In the upper left, a photo from the Ford picnic, 1963. A little girl on a swing. the girl in overalls watching from the shadows of a lilac bush. In another, Easter 1978, Josephine stands in a white dress, clutching a plastic egg. Over her shoulder, a pale barefoot child crouches in the hedges. The oldest photo was the most disturbing, black and white, dated 1957, unlabeled. A group of children in front of a church, smiling, kneeling, and on the far right, next to a marble column, her, looking into the lens, not 1 second older. Claire whispered, "This goes back further than we thought." Grange nodded. "I think she's been taking children for a long time, and no one stopped her because no one sees her. Until it's too late." Later that evening, Claire sat in her car staring at the trees across from the precinct. Dusk turned the pines into silhouettes. Her phone buzzed beside her on the passenger seat. Unknown number. She hesitated. Picked up. "Claire Reddick?" "Yes. This is George Hadley. I worked with your uncle, Hank, before he passed. I heard you're looking into the reunion photo from '94. Claire straightened. "Yes." There was a pause. Then, "You need to see something. Something your uncle left behind." George Hadley's property sat on the far edge of the county, tucked behind rows of overgrown hedges and rusted fencing. A barn sagged under the weight of its own roof. Inside, moths flitted around bare bulbs and stacks of antique hunting gear, old radios, and crates of damp-smelling documents. George led her to a locked metal cabinet in the back. "Your uncle used to say he felt guilty," the old man muttered. "He'd gone for a smoke during the reunion. Thought someone else had eyes on the kids. Maddie disappeared in the 5 minutes he was gone. He never forgave himself." He opened the cabinet and pulled out a leather-bound journal. The first page bore a title written in shaky pen, "The Vanishing Ones." Claire flipped through pages filled with scribbled notes, newspaper clippings, and hand-drawn maps of Mirror Pines. There were circles marked in red: the sycamore tree, cabin 7, the dry creek bed, and a note scrawled in all caps, "Always near water, always in the photos." George tapped a yellowed Polaroid near the back. "Maddie, August 1994. But this version hadn't been shared with the family. In this version, the girl in overalls wasn't just standing behind Maddie. She was reaching for her. That night, Claire sat on her apartment floor with every photo spread across the carpet. She arranged them by year: 1957, 1963, 1971, 1978, 1985, 1994, and one other, 1983, the year she turned 2. In that photo, she was reaching back towards something, laughing, and the girl in white overalls stood just behind her, one hand raised, inches from Claire's hair. But Claire hadn't been taken. Why? Why Maddie and not her? She flipped the photo over. In her mother's handwriting, 4th of July. Claire wandered off that night. Found her in the woods. Said she was playing with the girl with the quiet shoes. Claire dropped the photo. She had been chosen once, but she had come back. She stared at the photos for hours. Then her eyes landed on a sliver of paper tucked inside the journal. A name: E. Cross. Residence record. She pulled it free. Typed at the top: Pennsylvania Children's Welfare Board. Evelyn Marie Cross, 1967 to 1972. But the document was a lie. The dates were before the girl ever disappeared. And yet, Claire flipped to the last page. Final notation: subject removed from registry. Considered non-viable case. Do not pursue. There was a scribbled note in the margin in faded blue ink. Not a runaway. She was already gone before she left. Claire sat in the dark until morning. She now knew 3 things. The girl wasn't Evelyn Cross. She had been appearing in photographs for over 6 decades. Every child she appeared behind eventually vanished, except one: Claire Reddick. And for the first time, Claire asked herself, why was she spared? Claire hadn't set foot in Uncle Hank's basement in over 2 decades. The house, quiet since his death the previous spring, still smelled like pipe tobacco and old pennies. The furniture was covered in white cloths. The kitchen was stripped down to just a coffee maker and a box of stale Cheerios. But the basement door creaked open exactly the way she remembered. 4 steps down, and the air changed. Cooler. Denser. The kind of stillness that carried weight. Claire clicked on the overhead bulb. It flickered, then steadied. Shelves lined the walls, still packed with labeled toolboxes, old radio parts, tackle boxes, and decades of half-used hardware. A long wooden workbench stretched across the back, its surface layered in dust. Claire scanned the room until her eyes fell on a metal trunk in the corner. Not just old, forgotten. Cobwebs clung to the corners. The lock was rusted shut. She hesitated, then grabbed a wrench from the pegboard and struck the latch twice. It popped. The lid creaked as it lifted. Inside were 5 things. A crumpled brown envelope labeled film. Undeveloped, a hand-drawn map of Mirror Pines, a cassette recorder with the batteries removed, a yellowed newspaper article from 1972, and a notebook, water-stained but intact, with one phrase on the cover, "She walks between years." Claire sat cross-legged on the basement floor and opened the notebook. Page after page was filled with meticulous, borderline obsessive handwriting. August 1995. No one saw her. But she's there, always there. The children never cry. They simply vanish. No trace, no struggle, as if they followed willingly. April 1997. Compared photo from 63 to 94. Same child, same clothes, same face. Maddie smiled before she vanished. I think she saw her. July 2001. They call it the slip in folklore. A place between time, thin spots. She may not be alive, but she remembers how to walk among us. March 2004. The sycamore tree is the center. Check soil. Roots grow differently there, like something beneath is feeding them. Claire's throat tightened. This wasn't just grief. Uncle Hank had been investigating, for years. She pulled out the hand-drawn map. It showed the entire layout of Mirror Pines. Cabins, lake, fire pit, walking trails. But one section was circled in red. A ridge beyond Cabin 7, where the forest thickened and the land dropped sharply toward an old creek bed. Next to it, in all caps, "Cavity?" Claire traced her finger along the line and whispered, "What did you find?" She opened the envelope labeled film. Inside were 4 rolls of 35mm negatives, curled tight and brittle with age. Claire grabbed the old slide viewer from the shelf above the bench, popped in the first strip, and held it to the light. Faded, scratched, but still visible. Photo 1. Children gathered around a campfire. Mirror Pines, 1994. Photo 2. A group shot in front of Cabin 7. Photo 3. A zoomed-in shot of Maddie, mid-laugh. Photo 4. A figure, standing in the shadows behind her. Faint, out of focus. Claire squinted. Bare feet, white overalls, hands at her side, always at her side. She took the rolls to a 1-hour development service downtown. While she waited, she read through the yellowed newspaper article. It was another copy of the 1972 Evelyn Cross report. This one had a handwritten note at the bottom in Uncle Hank's script. She wasn't the first, not even close. But she might have been the last to resist. Claire shivered. The photos were ready by 3:10 p.m. She spread them across the hood of her car in the parking lot. 12 prints. Half were family shots. Campfires, lake days, birthday cakes, but 3 stopped her cold. One showed a long-forgotten reunion, 1976. A toddler sitting on a picnic blanket. Behind her, the girl in overalls. Another, 1985. Parker Quinn's 7th birthday. A line of children waiting for cake. The girl in overalls stood just beyond the edge of the table, holding something in her hand. Claire pulled the photo closer, It was a matchbox car. Red, rusted, burned on one side. Parker's favorite toy, according to his missing person report. Claire felt sick. The final photo was different. Shot from an angle low to the ground, beneath the floorboards of cabin 7. Claire blinked. A trap door, barely visible. Its outline traced in chalk, the shape of a handprint beside it. Tiny, and something written just above the frame, in smeared pencil. She brings the ones who listen. Claire drove straight to Jen's that evening. I need to go back to Mirror Pines, she said. Jen stared at her. Claire, no, that place is… I'm not going alone, Claire interrupted. I need you to come with me, please. Jen looked pale. You think Maddie's still there? Claire hesitated, then nodded. I think part of her is, and maybe something else too. They arrived just after 8 p.m. The campground was darker than Claire remembered. The cabins were mostly collapsed. Trees had grown up through broken floorboards. Nature had reclaimed everything but the silence. They carried headlamps and masks. Claire had no idea what the air inside those old buildings would be like. They stopped at cabin 7. The door hung open on one hinge. The interior was dust-coated and dim. Bunk beds collapsed. A drawer half open. A blue ribbon tangled in the floorboards. Where's the trap door? Jen whispered. Help me find the seam. They cleared debris, shoved aside a broken bench. Claire ran her hands along the floor. There, a small square, the edges just visible under years of grime. They pried it open. The air that rushed out was colder than it should have been, and stale. Inside, they found a small stone cavity, just big enough to crawl into, maybe 6 feet across, a dirt floor, old handprints on the wall in chalk, drawings, one of a tree, another of a figure in overalls, scribbled in childlike lines, and at the back, a cardboard box. Claire pulled it out. Inside, a cassette labeled Maddie, Day 3. A drawing of a sycamore tree with 2 stick figures beneath it and a photograph. Maddie, sitting cross-legged in a stone tunnel, eyes wide, smiling faintly. Next to her, the girl, smiling too. Claire staggered back. She's been down there. Jen covered her mouth. Claire, look at the drawing. Claire held it up. 2 stick figures stood beneath the tree. One had a bow in its hair. Maddie. The other was featureless. Blank face, bare feet. But behind them, drawn in red crayon, was a door. Floating. Standing alone. And on it, written in a shaky child scrawl, the between room. They left the campground just after 10:30 p.m., both shaken and silent. Claire gripped the cassette in her hand the whole ride home. The next morning, she borrowed a recorder from the school's AV room and pressed play. Click. Static. Then a voice. Maddie. It's day 3, I think. The lady said I can talk now. She says I was good. I got a sticker. Pause. Then another voice. Whispers. Not quite English. Maddie again. She wants me to draw the tree again. The one where we met. I did. She liked it. Said we'll go through soon. To the between room, where it's always quiet. The tape ended in static. Claire sat in the silence for a long time. Not just listening. Remembering. Because suddenly, in a flash of memory that felt less like a dream and more like a broken lock springing free, she remembered the girl. She remembered being 2, and a voice whispering to her in the dark, "You can stay, or you can forget." And Claire had chosen to forget. September 20th, 2024. Location, Mirror Pines Campground, Pennsylvania. Claire returned alone this time. Jen had begged her not to, but Claire couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop seeing that photograph. Maddie cross-legged in that stone cavity, smiling at the girl like they were old friends. Not afraid, not crying, just waiting. The weight of the cassette still lived in her bag, but she didn't need to play it again. Maddie's voice was burned into her brain. She wants me to draw the tree again. So Claire came back, not to grieve, but to open the door. She parked by the old ranger's cabin and hiked the narrow trail through the woods. Each step was louder than it should have been. The branches didn't rustle, the birds didn't call, even the wind seemed to avoid this part of the forest. Cabin 7 loomed in the clearing like a dead tooth, but Claire didn't go inside. She turned left, toward the sycamore. It stood just beyond the fire pit, taller than she remembered, thicker at the trunk. The ground beneath it was packed, firm, and still warm from the afternoon sun. Claire knelt at the base. Her fingers traced the bark. One small handprint, barely visible, was outlined in fading white chalk. A child's. Beside it, a second handprint, larger, older, and between them, an X, drawn in dark red. Claire reached into her bag and pulled out the map Hank had drawn, the one with cavity circled near this very spot. She started to dig. It took her nearly an hour. Just 3 inches down, her fingers struck something solid. Wood. She cleared the soil, revealing a narrow hatch, smaller than a coffin lid. The wood was water-swollen but intact. A rusted metal handle jutted from the top. Claire hesitated, then pulled. It opened with a crack of suction, releasing a gust of cold, damp air that smelled of clay and mildew. A narrow staircase led downward, swallowed by shadow. Claire clicked on her headlamp and descended. The passage sloped into the earth, walled by rough stone and timber braces. Roots threaded through the ceiling like veins. The air grew colder, denser. Her breath fogged in front of her. After 20 uneven steps, she reached a chamber. Not big, maybe 10 feet by 10. The walls were scrawled with drawings, trees, doors, children. Over and over again, in different hands, different years. And on the far wall, something new. A photo, fresh, pinned with a silver tack. Claire stepped closer. Her own face stared back at her, taken recently, from behind. She was crouching in front of the sycamore. Today. She dropped it. Someone, or something, had been watching her. Beside the pinned photo, a small alcove yawned open. Inside, a tunnel, narrow, just wide enough to crawl through. Claire dropped to her hands and knees. The stone scraped her elbows. The light danced across graffiti older than she was. Names scratched into the rock. Dozens of them. Troy, Hannah, Parker, Josephine, Maddie. Each name followed by a date, but not a birth date. A disappearance. The tunnel opened into a larger room. A round chamber. Silent, dirt-packed. The walls glimmered faintly as if coated in quartz. In the center stood a door, freestanding. No walls, no frame. Just a single, child-height door, painted a pale, sickly blue. Claire approached. It was too small for her, but not for a child. Chalk markings surrounded it, symbols, spirals, words in a language she didn't know. And on the door itself, written in red crayon, the between room. Claire stepped closer. A low hum filled the space, subtle at first, like the buzz of distant bees, then louder. She could feel it beneath her feet, in her ribs, in her teeth. The air shimmered around the door, and then the knob turned. Claire froze. The door opened half an inch. From behind it, a small hand reached out. Not menacing, not sudden, just present. A hand, then a whisper. "Maddie?" Claire's voice broke. Silence. Then the hand withdrew. The door creaked wider, and a voice, Maddie's voice, spoke again. "Claire?" Claire stepped forward. "Where are you?" "In the room," Maddie said. "Where the time is soft, where she waits." Claire touched the door. "You don't have to stay." Maddie paused. "She says I do." Claire's throat tightened. "Who is she?" Another voice, soft, toneless, echoed from deeper within. "She is the one who listens, the one who sees." Claire stepped back. The girl in overalls stood behind her now, expressionless, feet hovering just above the floor, her eyes black and deep and old. Claire didn't scream. She only asked, "Why me?" The girl tilted her head. "You were quiet. You listened. But I don't remember." "You chose not to." Claire looked back at the door. "I want Maddie." The girl didn't blink. "She wants you too, but she doesn't belong anymore." The air buzzed louder. The ground trembled. "You'll have to trade." Claire's stomach dropped. "Trade?" The girl nodded once. "1 for 1. Claire stood frozen, then turned back to the between-room door. "Maddie," she whispered, "do you want to come back?" A pause. "Will you stay with her?" Claire closed her eyes. She remembered the balloon caught in the fence, the unanswered questions, the decades of silence, and the moment she turned away from the woods all those years ago when she could have followed, but didn't. She opened her eyes. "I will." The door creaked. A face emerged. Maddie. Still 5, still barefoot, still in that cherry print dress. She smiled, then stepped out. Claire felt the shift instantly. The air thickened, the light dimmed, and the girl in overalls nodded. Claire didn't look back as the door closed. She only whispered one final word, "Remember me." And then, the between room swallowed her. September 22nd, 2024. Location, Cherryville, Pennsylvania. Maddie stood in the clearing, blinking into the sun. The air felt different, warmer, sharper, the light too bright, the trees too green. She didn't know what year it was. She only knew that Claire was gone. Jen found her an hour later, barefoot and dazed, walking along the edge of the old fire road near Mirror Pines. Maddie didn't speak at first, just held Jen's hand, eyes wide, lips parted like she was trying to remember how to breathe. At the hospital, the staff asked 100 questions. Her name, her birthday, the last thing she remembered. She told them, "I was at the reunion. Then I went with the girl. Then Claire brought me back." They assumed trauma, regression, false memories. But the tests told a different story. The girl in the bed was 5 years old. And she hadn't aged, not a single day since July 1994. Detective Grange arrived 2 days later with a stack of files and one photo from 1994. She sat across from Maddie in the playroom. "Do you know who this is?" Grange asked, pointing at the girl in white overalls. Maddie looked and nodded. "She watches. She takes kids who don't belong." "Belong where?" "In time," Maddie whispered. "She says it gets loud and mean. So she brings us to the between room where it's soft." Grange leaned forward. "And Claire, what did she do?" Maddie's face fell. "She traded." "For who?" "Me." Jen was the one who found Claire's camera bag on the floor of cabin 7. The contents had been disturbed, leaves scattered, photos torn from their envelopes, but one image remained, tucked into the back compartment. A photograph of Claire, standing in front of the sycamore. She was smiling, and behind her, faint and nearly faded from exposure, was the girl in white overalls, holding Claire's hand. They held a service at the Cherryville Chapel the following weekend. No casket, no obituary, just a single frame on the altar. Claire as a child, beaming in a backyard full of sparklers. Afterward, Jen brought Maddie home to stay with her indefinitely. The doctors were still baffled. DNA confirmed her identity, but her body hadn't changed in 30 years. Not a scar, not a growth spurt, not a wrinkle of time. They gave her crayons in the hospital. She drew trees, a door, and always, always, a girl. Grange reopened the files, unofficially. She marked each case with a red stamp, pending, visual anomaly present, and gathered every known photo of the barefoot girl into one digital archive. She called it Project Between. And then she filed one last image. A photograph captured from a trail cam near the campground the night Claire disappeared. Low res, night vision. But clear enough. A figure, barefoot, walking through the pines, holding a child's hand, and behind them, Claire, looking back, smiling. September 24th, 2024. Location, Jefferson Township, Pennsylvania. The cold case unit was quiet when Grange returned that night. Just her and the photographs. She spread them across the table one final time. Images dating from 1957 to 2024. Each featured a child under the age of 7. Each contained, somewhere in the frame, the same pale figure in white overalls. Never aging. Never smiling. Always watching. Grange had spent 22 years trying to understand why some kids vanished and others didn't. Now she was beginning to see the pattern. And the lie. She returned to the Evelyn Cross file, pulled it from the locked archive. Inside, a blurry school photo, a foster placement record, a single note scribbled across the bottom of a welfare board memo. Unresponsive. Stares into space. Communicates only in drawings. The girl they had called Evelyn Marie Cross had no surviving relatives, no biological markers, no medical history before 1967, and no confirmed sightings after 1972. Grange looked at the school photo again. It resembled the barefoot girl, but it wasn't her. Not exactly. The hair was longer, the eyes more alert, the mouth twisted in a kind of sadness. The girl in the photographs was something else. Not Evelyn, not human maybe, just present. Like gravity, like rot, like time itself learning to wear a face. Grange picked up the photo from Parker Quinn's birthday again. In the background, the girl held a toy Matchbox car, Parker's favorite. That same car had been found buried in a rusted coffee tin behind the Quinn family's old shed in 2002, 17 years after he vanished. There was no explanation, no fingerprints, but the toy was untouched by weather, as if someone, or something, had preserved it. Grange started mapping it all out. A corkboard, dozens of pins, threads connecting dates, faces, locations, and one central node, Mirror Pines. Not just the camp, but the land itself. All disappearances occurred within a 30-mile radius. Every photograph with the barefoot girl tied back to events hosted near the same ridge, the same trees, the same water. She wasn't hunting them. She was waiting. The children came to her, again and again, as if summoned. Later that night, Maddie woke in Jen's house. The bedroom was too quiet, the hallway darker than it should have been. She slipped out of bed, barefoot, and tiptoed to the living room. There, on the bookshelf, sat a photo album. New. But something about it was wrong. She opened it. Inside, dozens of Polaroids, each one of her, but not just from the reunion. From the days after, playing in the between room, drawing on the walls, sleeping on a pile of blankets in a stone corner. She turned another page. Claire, standing at the door, watching. Another page. A child's crayon drawing. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small. The tall one had a circle around its head. Maddie turned one more page and stopped. It was blank, but a sentence was scribbled in red ink at the top. She is not done. At dawn, Jen found Maddie curled on the couch, eyes open, photo album in her lap. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "She's looking again." That same morning, a new email landed in Grange's inbox. Subject, incoming case, missing child date. September 24th, 2024 location, Blue Ridge Baptist Fall Picnic, 28 miles from Mirror Pines. Victim, Elsie Hartwell, age 6. Last seen, standing near the tree line, holding a paper kite. Time elapsed. 90 minutes, evidence, no scream, no struggle. Just the kite, folded, laid carefully on the ground. Grange froze. She pulled up Google Maps, marked the picnic site, exactly within the 30-mile radius. The cycle had begun again. She returned to her corkboard and stared at the center. Mirror Pines. She added a new photo. Claire Reddick. Date unknown. Standing near the sycamore tree, a smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. Behind her, just visible in the trees, the outline of a child's hand resting gently on her shoulder. Her name was never Evelyn. There was no name, because names belong to people. And the girl in the photograph wasn't someone. She was something. An echo, a hunger, a door that opened only for the quiet ones. September 26th, 2024. Location, Mirror Pines region, Pennsylvania. The search for Elsie Hartwell had entered its third day. Volunteers combed the woods. Dogs were brought in. Drones scanned the canopy. But the girl's paper kite, folded like a goodbye note, was the only thing left behind. Not a shoe, not a footprint. Detective Grange stood near the picnic site, her boots planted in the soft grass where Elsie had last been seen. The families were camped just 100 yards away. No one had heard a scream, but a few of the children told a different story. She was talking to someone in the woods, one said. She said the girl in the white pants wanted to play, another whispered. Grange didn't bother to correct them. She just turned toward the tree line and listened. Back in Cherryville, Maddie hadn't spoken in 2 days, not since the dream. She wouldn't tell Jen what she saw, only that she woke up with dirt under her fingernails and a drawing clutched in her hand. Jen opened it that morning. Red crayon on printer paper. A girl drawn in heavy lines. No eyes, just black pits. And behind her, Claire. But she looked different. Older, changed. Like she'd seen something that no one should ever survive. Grange called Claire's former apartment complex later that day. The landlord confirmed what she already feared. A Polaroid had arrived in the mailbox, unsigned. Claire, in the woods, eyes closed, hand resting on the shoulder of a child, a new child, one not on any registry, one not yet missing. Grange requested the photo be mailed to her office. She knew what it meant before it arrived. Claire had become the one who led them, the quiet one, the one who listened, the one who now stood behind the girl in overalls, watching, waiting. That evening, Maddie opened the basement door at Jen's house and walked down without saying a word. At the bottom of the stairs was a crawl-space door that hadn't been opened in years. She reached for it, pulled it open, and crawled inside. The space was too small, too cold, too dark, but she didn't cry. She only whispered, "You left the door open." Silence. Then, "She needs someone new," came the answer. Not Claire's voice, but close, familiar, older. Maddie reached out in the dark, and her fingers brushed wood. A frame, a knob, a door. She felt it breathe beneath her hand, alive, listening. Grange received the envelope the next morning. Inside were 2 Polaroids, one of Claire standing in front of a stone wall, eyes dark, hair wind-blown, holding a red balloon. The second, a new child, smiling, but behind her, barely visible through the trees. 2 figures now, Claire and the barefoot girl, holding hands, watching. Grange updated her board. She added a final note. The door is not closed. It never was. And in a second column, the listener has become the walker, the taken becomes the guide, and the game begins again. She turned out the light and left the room in silence. That night, Maddie stood by her window. The neighborhood was asleep, the wind quiet, the trees still, and in the reflection of the glass, a shape, small, barefoot, standing behind her. Maddie didn't flinch. She only nodded and whispered, "I remember now." September 28th, 2024. Location, Mirror Pines, Pennsylvania. The trees had started to whisper again. That's what the children in Cherryville were saying. Strange dreams, Shapes in the pines. A girl in white seen through the classroom window. The teachers laughed it off. But Maddie knew better. She could hear it too. Not voices exactly. More like the suggestion of them. Like the forest exhaling a story it was too old to remember clearly. She stood in Jen's backyard that morning, clutching a crayon drawing tight to her chest. On it, a door, a tree, a girl, always the same, always watching. But this time, something new. A window drawn next to the door. And a face in the window. Her own. Claire stood at the edge of the woods, just inside the tree line near the campground ruins. She wasn't quite solid anymore. The birds didn't notice her. The insects didn't land on her skin. She had become something else. Not the barefoot girl. Not yet. But not Claire either. Somewhere in between. In her hand she held a photograph. Maddie's last birthday. Her real one. July 16th, 1994. Balloons. A cherry print dress. A family smiling at the edge of the shot. Claire folded the photo once, then again, tucked it into the hollow of the sycamore, and turned toward the fire pit clearing. The between room was stirring again, and someone new was coming. Grange called Jen around noon. Another child had gone missing. Kara Tillman, age 6, disappeared from her grandmother's garden while planting marigolds. No signs of struggle, no witnesses, but a photograph had been found. One no one remembered taking. Kara, smiling on the front steps, and in the reflection of the glass door behind her, Claire, eyes blank, feet bare, hair tangled with leaves. That night, Maddie woke at exactly 3:03 a.m., the between time. She walked to her closet and opened the door slowly. Inside, nothing but shadows, and one small slip of paper on the floor, folded. She opened it. "The last guest is you." Grange arrived at Mirror Pines before sunrise. The camp had been cordoned off, the tape flapping in the breeze. Her flashlight beam cut through the mist as she made her way past the cabins toward the tree line. She didn't know what she expected, but she found it anyway. A door, freestanding, half-rotted, painted blue, standing in the clearing, a red balloon tied to the knob. And behind it, just barely visible in the shifting dark, Claire, standing silently, waiting. Grange didn't speak. She didn't raise her weapon. She only stepped forward and said, "How many more?" Claire didn't answer. She simply pointed to the base of the door. A new photograph had been pinned there. Not old, not aged, printed on glossy paper. A child Grange didn't recognize, yet. She knelt and picked it up. On the back, a name. June Everly, age 7, future. She looked up, but the door was already gone. And Claire with it. Maddie drew one last picture before sunrise. This one was different. No trees, no door, no girl. Just a hand, reaching toward her. And her own, reaching back. The crayon snapped halfway through the drawing, but she didn't pick up another. She simply folded the paper, placed it on her windowsill, and whispered, "Okay," then went back to bed. Grange placed the new photo on the corkboard with the others. Underneath, she wrote, "The last guest has already been invited." But she didn't know who sent the invitation. Not yet. In the attic of an abandoned ranger station near Mirror Pines, a cassette recorder clicked on by itself. Static filled the room. Then a voice. Not Maddie's, not Claire's, but a child's. Faint, tired. "She says there's still room. She saved a place for you. It's never been about who gets taken. It's about who stays to open the door." At 4:44 a.m., every trail cam within a 5-mile radius of Mirror Pines captured the same image. The blue door. Just standing there. And in the last frame, before the batteries all drained at once, it was open. And a single figure was walking through. Small, barefoot, carrying a crayon drawing in her hand. October 4th, 2024. Location: Mirror Pines Memorial Archive, Pennsylvania. They turned the old ranger station into a memorial site. Not a museum, not officially. But locals brought offerings anyway. Faded photographs, stuffed animals, birthday candles, notes scrawled on scraps of lined paper and tucked into the cracks of the wall. There was no plaque, just a small sign at the trailhead, in memory of the ones who vanished, and the ones who opened the door. Grange visited once a week. She didn't say much, just stood near the hollow tree and waited. Sometimes she felt it, a hum in the air, the sense that something old and half awake was still listening. Other times there was silence, but on the first Sunday of October, she found something new, pinned to the sycamore with a bent nail. A shoe. Children's size 9, worn, cherry print lining, Maddie's. Inside, curled like a message in a bottle, was a photograph. It was Claire, sitting in a circle of children beneath a vast, dark tree. She wasn't afraid. She was smiling. And in her lap sat a girl with tangled hair and a dirt-smeared face. Elsie Hartwell. Grange turned the photo over, one line written in thick red ink. She never left. She just stopped being seen. That winter, the Mirror Pines property was purchased by the state. Plans were drawn up to clear the ruins and build a new recreational area. Lakeside cabins, hiking trails, maybe even a playground. But the workers didn't stay long. First, it was tools going missing, then drawings appearing on unfinished walls, then voices heard in the cabins before dawn. They walked off the site, and no one came back. Maddie's drawing was eventually placed in a sealed glass frame at the archive, her final one before she vanished again. A hand reaching out. One word scribbled at the bottom in red. Stay. No one could explain it. But the room where they stored it, room 4C, always felt colder than the rest. In 2026, a camper posted a photo to a private online forum. She claimed it was just a creepy tree she found during a solo hike near Mirror Pines. But in the background, standing half-shadowed behind the trunk, a barefoot girl in white overalls. And beside her, a taller figure, head tilted, eyes wide, both watching and waiting. Some doors don't close, some names are never spoken, and some guests never leave.